So that's kind of the message that I want people to take away from this. But in terms of how do audiences relate to the difficulties of that in their own life, I think that is just a human experience. I think all of us in some way or another want to connect, and we want to be our full selves in relationship with others. And I think through various constructs that we've created, we make it harder for us to show up as our full self. So I know that audience members, because I too am an audience member, I know what it's like to want to be accepted fully and truly as yourself. So I hope that this project gives more people permission, more people space to really embrace that. What collaborations or external influences shaped the direction of this? So for me, it was a combination of film. I watched a lot of film, a lot of TV, a lot of books. My friend Dawn, who's here, she got me onto this film called Of an Age, maybe 2 years ago when it came out. And it's really about these two young men trying to figure themselves out, not just in terms of where they want to go, but how they want to, I don't know, be in a relationship. And that just opened my mind. So I went on this journey of watching all these different TV shows, like Interview with a Vampire, or reading James Baldwin's work like Giovanni's Room, and How to Write an Autobiographical Novel by Alexander Chi. That kind of was the homework that I was using to kind of help guide me in finding answers for the project, or answers to the questions that I had set out to answer for myself. So having those as resources and starting points, I got to really understand more about the history of softness in our human experience. And I think about how maybe 40, 50 years ago that there were people who still wanted the same things that we want. I think, going to parties, going to your loved one, and being as honest as possible about who it is you are, is not a new experience. So seeing the people who came before us, who have lost loved ones, right, to whether that be the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, whether that be just various health crises throughout this time, or just lack of resources, racism, all these other isms that keep people from being honest, that keep people from being their true selves. That is what helped me formulate some of the words. I have a song on this project called Mine, and that is really an exercise for me to really understand what it means to come of age. And coming of age, like I said, I feel like we have to get pragmatic. We have to get logical and reasonable. We have to get harder. We have to be more rigid in how we view the world, how we view people, to not be taken advantage of, and all these other things. But I think the older we get, we owe it to ourselves to be softer, because there's people who didn't get the opportunity to do so. There's people who wanted to do so much and accomplish so much. And here we are, getting older every day, fearing and dreading the next age, the next big milestone, and figuring out all the ways that we're failing and not meeting the individual goals we met for ourselves, when there's people who never had that, who never got to do that, who never got to explore, who never got to establish a softness in their pocket or their corner of the world to make it easier for all of us to be honest with ourselves. So I wanted to get through to that somehow, and to say, like, while it's hard growing up, while it's hard getting older, while it's hard falling in and out of love, it's something you must do. It's a requirement. You will get old, you will find love, you will fall out of love. Love won't come back to you in the way you want it to. And that doesn't make you a loser, that doesn't make you a failure, that doesn't mean you need to be harder in your approach. Maybe healthier, sure. Maybe you can be a little more critical about how you want to move safely. But there's nothing shameful, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing childish about wanting to maintain that honesty and that softness as you age, and embracing that. So that's kind of what I want people to take away from this project. That's some of the things that influenced the work in itself, and kind of tying into this next question. How do you hope to challenge cultural narratives around masculinity and emotional openness, especially in Black and brown communities? And that's kind of something, I was seeing this tweet the other day about the colonizing the mind and what that means for people. And I think especially for Black and brown, not just men, but Black and brown people who are working to decolonize their minds and their lives. There's so much that we don't know about our human experience because we kind of start at, in schools, we're starting at slavery, or we're starting at the formation of the United States colony in that project. But human beings have been on this planet for so long and have created and have invented so many different ways of living, so many different ways of loving one another, and so many different ways of being open and expressing themselves. And a lot of that was lost in the history that we learn in school, in the history that we tell ourselves colloquially in everyday life. The idea of gender norms, the idea of social constructs, all those other things aren't really important. When meteors can fall out of the sky, when hurricanes can come and take everything that you love, everything that you know in an instant, the idea that you want to beholden yourself to a ritual or a practice that not only that serves you, but actually deprives you of your fullness. I hope that is one thing that we can start working on going forward. This idea that we have to perform a rigid, like a hardness. Life is so fleeting. Life is so full of opportunity to enact the vision that you want for yourself. So I hope with this project, that was the whole point, was to start having that conversation and start doing the work to get there, especially for me. And then I'm going to wrap up the interview part with the last question that she has here. What are some personal barriers that you confronted while creating this project? And how did you push through those barriers? And reading books like How to Write an Autobiographical Novel did that for me, because I think it's really hard to talk about some of these things. Moments where you can easily be construed as someone who's being embarrassing or someone who's being like cringe. I think especially in the artist journey, right? That's just something that a lot of artists have to swallow and have to bite. This idea that you pursuing an artistic endeavor, you telling a story is something that is full of shame, or you're not being realistic. And I feel that in this project, I had to overcome that. I had to overcome that urge that I was being cringe, or that I was doing too much. The stories that I was wanting to talk about, the stories I wanted to tell, the ideas that mean so much to me, but I couldn't honestly say, okay, here's what happened from A to B to C to D, right? But I still wanted to get to the meat of what was keeping me from being honest, not only to myself, but in my work. So reading books like How to Write an Autobiographical Novel gave me some language to create a universe, to create a world where I can say, you know what, here you have all the permission to do all of this stuff. You can be as cringe as you want, you can be as silly as you want, you can be as vulnerable, you can be as explicit and honest as you want. And then, of course, through the editing and revision process, we'll figure out what is necessary and what isn't. But you have the full permission. And I never really gave myself that outside of before. So kind of doing that with this project, talking about the things that I wanted to talk about for the first time, honestly, without having to be like, oh, y'all, here's my diary entry for July 12th, 2018. This was more just like, let me find ways to still be creative, but still talk about things that matter to me. And that's kind of how I was able to get out of that, those personal barriers that kind of maybe would have prevented me from being honest about that before. So with that being said, I'm gonna do one last song for you all called 24/7. Before I do that, I kind of wanted to take one last opportunity to thank Jada for her visionary work, for trying to push through despite all the things happening in the world. I hope you have a speedy recovery. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you all for coming out. We want to do this one last song, and let's get into it. myself for the first time. So maybe this is how close I might should be. I've been 27 years, and I heard every one of my tears. Hold my eyes when I pray. Fasted 7 days, another day. All my bills and unpaid. What do we do when life takes a bite out of you? Everything changes when you come changing. Everything that's wrong with you. Some of my words never clear. Wanted to die, stolen and painful. Said this is life, it's supposed to kill you. Everything changes when it comes changing. Everything was far from you. When life takes a bite out of you, everything changes. Everything was far from you. I've been 24, still been my time. Oh yeah, it may feel like no one gets it, and all your friends saying go missing every time. It's non-existent, and breathing so expensive. What do you do when life takes a bite out of you? Should you up and spit you out? What do you do when you get up now? Gotta keep going, gotta keep going on. Pick yourself up and dust yourself off. Do it again, again. 24 more, 7 years. Thank you so much for coming out. I've been at Hampton. It's been a pleasure.